I'm not the kind of guy who usually writes down my thoughts, let alone share them with the world. But here I am, ready to spill everything about what's become one of the most humiliating and painful experiences of my life. My name's Mike, and my marriage to Sarah just crumbled in a way I never saw coming. We were that couple everyone looked up to, a picture-perfect life, or so I thought. I mean, we were both in our 30s, had a beautiful home in Denver, and we always had a laugh together. But lately, things started to feel off. At first, it was subtle. Sarah began coming home late from happy hours with her coworkers, claiming they were just bonding over drinks. I didn't think much of it until I noticed she started to change. She began dressing up more than usual, wearing high heels and putting on makeup at odd times. I remember one evening she told me she was going to have dinner with the girls, but when I called her, her phone went straight to voicemail. It was a little suspicious, but I brushed it off. After all, I trusted her. But that trust began to wane when I noticed her phone was always face down on the table, and she would get defensive whenever I asked about it. I also caught her texting late at night. She always claimed it was work-related, but I wasn't so sure. And then there was the bartender at our favorite bar, Tony. He was young, charming, and always a bit too friendly with Sarah. I never thought much of it until that fateful Friday night when everything came crashing down. I had planned a surprise date night for us, something to reignite that spark we used to have. I rushed home from work, excited to see her and spoil her a bit. I had the whole thing figured out, reservations at the bar, a nice bottle of wine and her favorite steak. But when I walked in, the house was empty. I checked my phone, and that's when I saw it. A message from a friend who happened to be at the bar where we usually went, saying he'd spotted Sarah with Tony, sharing drinks and laughing way too intimately. That gut punch hit me like a freight train. I could feel my heart racing as anger and betrayal flooded through me. I had to see it for myself. I jumped in my car and sped to the bar. I parked a couple of blocks away and walked toward the entrance, trying to keep my composure. My stomach twisted with every step as I pushed the door open. And there they were, Sarah and Tony, huddled close at the bar, her head thrown back in laughter and his arm casually draped over her shoulder. It was like a scene from a bad movie. I felt sick to my stomach. I stood there frozen, watching the woman I loved act like she was in some romantic comedy while I was out there imagining a future with her. I couldn't believe she would betray me like this, all while I was planning a romantic evening. My blood boiled and I couldn't help but confront them. I marched over to the bar, my fists clenched, and when I reached them I said, "Well, isn't this cozy?" Sarah's face drained of color as she turned to me, shock evident in her eyes. She quickly tried to put on a mask of innocence. "Mike, what are you doing here?" she stammered, and the guilt was written all over her face. Tony, however, just looked smug, like he had won some kind of twisted prize. I didn't care what she had to say. I wanted her to admit what I already knew. "We need to talk," I said, my voice low but steady. Her eyes darted back to Tony as if looking for a way out. "You can go," I shot at him, and just like that he stood up and left, leaving me and Sarah alone in the middle of the bar, the whole room suddenly feeling like it was closing in on us. "I can explain," she started, but that was the last thing I wanted to hear. I had been living a lie and I needed to know the truth. "Explain what?" "That you were cheating on me with that guy, the bartender." My heart raced as I stared at her, searching for any sign of remorse, but all I got was a defensive glare. "He's just a friend, Mike. We were talking about work. You're overreacting." Her voice rose and I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me. "Talking about work? Is that what you call it?" Because it sure looked like a hell of a lot more than that. I was done with her excuses. I wanted her to see how hurt I was and how betrayed I felt. She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. "Look, I don't want to hear any more lies. I saw you two together and I'm not going to play this game anymore." My heart was in my throat, feeling like it might burst out of my chest. The emotions crashed over me, angry, betrayed, confused. I couldn't believe the woman I had trusted was capable of this. I was a fool, and I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to tumble into a dark abyss of despair. I turned my back on her. Little did she know that this was just the beginning of my plan for revenge. I was done being the victim in this story. I was about to take control of my life, and things were about to change dramatically. After that night, I was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, betrayal, confusion, and a deep-seated sadness that settled in my chest like a heavy stone. I didn't sleep for days, my mind replaying every moment with Sarah, every sweet word she'd whispered that now felt like poison. I felt like a complete idiot for trusting her, for believing she would never do something like this. But as the initial shock wore off, something else kicked in: determination. I couldn't just sit back and let this go unpunished. The more I thought about Tony, the more I simmered. Who did he think he was, stepping into my life and ruining everything I had built with Sarah? I needed a plan. I had to hit back. I was done being the good guy in this twisted tale. I wanted them to feel the weight of their betrayal. First, I started gathering information. I wanted to know everything about Tony. I reached out to a few mutual friends and dug into social media. Turns out, he was just a bartender in his 20s, working at a local bar called the Cornerstone. It was a trendy spot where young professionals went to unwind, and I knew it well. Sarah and I had spent many nights there, but now it just felt like a pit of betrayal. The more I learned about him, the angrier I got. He was the kind of guy who thrived on attention, boasting about his conquests and charm. I could picture him effortlessly flirting with Sarah, his cocky demeanor wearing her down until she let her guard down. I couldn't let him get away with this. Not only had he disrespected me, but he had also ruined my marriage. It was time to take action. I decided to buy the bar. It was an impulsive idea, but one that felt right. I leveraged some savings and got a loan from the bank. Before I knew it, I was sitting across from the owner, finalizing the paperwork. I remember the thrill of it all. The prospect of having power in a situation where I had felt utterly powerless was intoxicating. After I became the owner, I made it a point to familiarize myself with the staff and the regulars. I visited often, pretending to be the new owner excited to revamp the place and attract a bigger crowd. I was friendly, engaging with everyone, but in the back of my mind I was focused on one goal: getting rid of Tony. Finally, the moment came when I could put my plan into action. One evening I called a staff meeting. The bar was buzzing with chatter as I stood at the front, adrenaline pumping through my veins. I could see Tony lounging behind the bar, his usual smug grin plastered on his face. I took a deep breath, ready to deliver my verdict. "Thanks for coming, everyone. I really appreciate your hard work. I'm excited to be a part of the team and to make the Cornerstone a great place for everyone." I started, keeping my tone casual, but my eyes were locked on Tony. "That said, I need to make some changes for the betterment of the bar, and that includes staffing adjustments." I glanced at Tony, who was now paying attention. "Effective immediately, Tony, you're no longer working here." The words hung in the air, and I could feel the tension rise in the room. Tony's face transformed from smug to shocked in an instant. "What? You can't be serious," he protested, looking around at the other employees for support. "I'm one of the best bartenders in the city. You can't just fire me." "Oh, I can," I replied, my voice steady. "I'm the owner now, and I don't think you're a good fit for this bar anymore. You've crossed lines that you shouldn't have crossed." I could see the realization dawning on him, and for a brief moment I reveled in it. The staff murmured amongst themselves, and I could see some of them smirking while others looked uncomfortable. But I didn't care. This was my moment. "You've contributed to a toxic atmosphere here, and I won't allow that to continue. You can gather your things and leave." Tony stood there for a moment, dumbfounded, and I could see the anger bubbling beneath the surface. "You'd really fire me over some petty jealousy?" He shot back, his voice sharp. "It's not jealousy, Tony, it's called self-respect," I shot back. I didn't want to let his words get to me, but when I thought about Sarah, it only fueled my fire. "Now, please don't make this harder than it has to be. Just get your things and go." He hesitated for a moment, and I could see him weighing his options. But as he turned to gather his belongings, I felt a rush of satisfaction. I had done it. I had kicked him out of the bar, and now I would kick him out of my life for good. As he exited through the front door, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. But my victory was short-lived. I knew Sarah would find out soon enough, and I braced myself for the fallout. I had taken the first step in my revenge, but I knew this was only the beginning. I wanted her to understand the consequences of her actions. the pain she had caused me, and how her decisions had irrevocably changed our lives. As the night wore on and the bar buzzed with excitement, I couldn't ignore the emptiness I still felt inside. The victory, while sweet, was bittersweet. I was left with the unfamiliar reality that I was navigating a path I never wanted to take. But one thing was certain: the game had changed, and I was no longer the victim. After I fired Tony, I thought I would feel a weight lifted off my shoulders, but instead, I was left grappling with a mix of emotions that I hadn't anticipated. Yes, I had taken a step toward reclaiming my dignity, but I felt the looming presence of Sarah's eventual response. I knew it wouldn't be long until she discovered what had transpired at the cornerstone. The next few days were a blur. I threw myself into my new role as the owner, trying to make changes that would breathe new life into the bar. I revamped the drink menu, brought in live music on weekends, and even introduced themed nights to draw in more customers. I wanted to create a buzzing atmosphere that would distract me from the chaos in my personal life. But every time I walked through the bar, I felt the shadow of Sarah's betrayal lurking around me. Then came the day I dreaded. Sarah stormed into the cornerstone, her eyes flashing with anger. She had just come from the gym, wearing a workout top and leggings, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. I could see she was ready for a fight, and I braced myself for what was about to unfold. "Mike, what the hell is this?" she shouted, her voice piercing through the usual bar chatter. Patrons turned to look, and I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. I took a deep breath and approached her, trying to maintain my composure. "Sarah, maybe we can talk about this somewhere." "No, you're going to tell me why you just fired Tony. Are you seriously that petty?" She cut me off, her anger palpable. I could see her struggling to twist the situation to make me look like the bad guy. "I fired him because he's a loser who thought it was okay to flirt with my wife." I shot back, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions churning inside me. "Flirt? Are you kidding me? You're just jealous because he's younger and better looking." She snapped, crossing her arms defiantly. It was like she was trying to turn the tables, and I couldn't let her. "Better looking? Is that really your argument here? I thought we had something special, and you chose to throw it away for a guy who pours drinks for a living." I replied, my anger bubbling over. I felt like I was losing control, but I couldn't let her walk all over me. "Don't act like you're some saint, Mike. You've been so wrapped up in your work that you've neglected me. I thought I was just being supportive." She retorted, her voice rising with each word. It was a classic deflection, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. "Supportive? You mean supportive of lying to me and sneaking around with him? That's your version of support?" I shot back. The tension in the air was thick, and the patrons in the bar were watching our confrontation unfold with bated breath. "Mike, this is absurd. You're blowing this out of proportion," she said, her tone shifting as if she were trying to reason with me. "You have no idea what was going on." "Then enlighten me, Sarah. What was going on? What do you think I should believe after seeing you with him?" I felt my hands clench into fists. "You say that you cared about our marriage, but you were out there making a fool out of me." She opened her mouth, ready to respond, but all that came out was a frustrated sigh. "You always do this. You can't just accept that I need more than what you're offering." "What I'm offering? You mean loyalty and love. What more do you need?" I shot back, my heart racing as I watched her pull away, the reality of our situation sinking in. "Maybe I need someone who actually pays attention to me," she exclaimed, her eyes flashing. "Maybe I need someone who treats me like I'm worth more than just a placeholder." Her words cut through me like a knife. It was a confession wrapped in a justification, and it hurt more than I cared to admit. I had always believed that our love was strong enough to weather any storm, but now I was left questioning everything. "So that's it. You let some guy with a charming smile and a bottle of whiskey come in and replace me." She opened her mouth to respond, but the hurt in her eyes faltered her words. Instead, she shifted tactics. "You know what? You've made your choice and I'll make mine. I don't need this crap. I'm done with you." With that, she turned on her heel and stormed out of the bar, leaving me standing there, a mix of anger and despair coursing through me. After she left, I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. I knew this was just the beginning of a long, painful process of healing and acceptance. The bar was quiet, the music playing softly in the background, but I felt like I was in a void. I had taken the steps to take control of my life, but the emotional fallout was overwhelming. As the days passed, I oscillated between anger and sadness. I threw myself into work, trying to create a space that felt welcoming and warm, but I couldn't shake the sense of loss that clung to me. I started diving deeper into the bar scene, making connections and building a community around the cornerstone. This was my sanctuary now, my refuge from the turmoil that had become my personal life. Yet, as I watched couples come in, laughing and enjoying each other's company, I couldn't help but feel the sting of Sarah's betrayal. I missed the companionship, the laughter, and the intimacy we had shared. It felt like I was living a double life, one where I was thriving at the bar and another where I was drowning in my emotions. But underneath all of it, I felt a fire building within me. I was determined to move on and become stronger. I wanted to show Sarah that I wouldn't be broken by her betrayal. I wouldn't let her define my worth or my future. I was ready to embrace the unknown and start anew, but first, I had to confront the reality of the situation and the dissolution of our marriage. Soon, I knew I would have to make a decision about how to move forward in the wake of this chaos. But for now, I focused on forging a new path, one that would lead me away from the pain and toward a future where I could reclaim my happiness. The days turned into weeks, and as I continued to pour my energy into the cornerstone, I found solace in the routine of bar life. It became my escape, a place where I could focus on building something new and exciting. My staff was great, and the regulars started to feel like family. Every night, as I watched people laugh and connect over drinks, I felt a flicker of hope that I could find joy again. But even amidst the laughter, there was an undeniable emptiness. I often found myself staring into my drink, lost in thought, replaying the moments leading up to the collapse of my marriage. The memories of Sarah lingered like a ghost in the back of my mind. I had sworn I would move on, but every time I thought I had buried the pain, something would remind me of her. One evening, as I was closing up the bar, I received a call from my best friend, Jake. He had been my rock throughout this whole ordeal, and I valued his perspective. "Hey, man, I was thinking maybe we should grab a drink tomorrow, just us. Catch up, you know." I hesitated for a moment, contemplating whether I wanted to spill my guts again. "Yeah, sure," I replied, forcing a smile that I knew he couldn't see. "Sounds good." The following evening, we met at a different bar downtown, one that I hadn't frequented since I took ownership of the cornerstone. As we settled into our seats, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of comfort and unease. Jake poured me a drink, and we started chatting, but I could tell he was waiting for me to open up about everything. "All right, Mike, you've been avoiding this, but we need to talk about Sarah," Jake said, leaning forward, his expression serious. I sighed, knowing this was coming. "What's there to talk about, Jake? She cheated on me. I'm trying to move on." "Moving on doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen," he replied, his tone gentle but firm. "You can't just shove your feelings down and expect them to disappear. You've got to face what happened, man." His words cut deep, but I knew he was right. I had been running from the pain, hiding behind smiles and bar banter, but inside I was still reeling from the betrayal. "I just don't want to dwell on it anymore. I want to focus on the bar, on my life." "And that's great, but you've got to give yourself space to heal too," he insisted. "This isn't just about the affair, it's about the relationship you had. You built a life with her, and that's not easy to let go of." As I stared into my drink, I felt the familiar ache in my chest. "I keep wondering if I could have done something differently, you know. What if I had paid more attention?" Jake shook his head. "Dude, it's not your fault. You can't control another person's actions. She made her choices and they were hers alone." "Yeah, it just feels like I was blindsided," I said, frustration bubbling up. "We had a good thing going. I thought we were solid." "I know, man, but sometimes people change. They lose sight of what's important," he said, trying to reassure me. "You're going to come out of this stronger, I promise." "Stronger?" I echoed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "I'm just a guy who got cheated on. How am I supposed to come out of that stronger?" "By learning from it," Jake said, his voice steady. "You'll learn what you want in a relationship. You'll realize what you deserve, and that's going to guide you to something better, Trust me on this." His words resonated with me, creating a spark of realization. I had been so consumed by anger and betrayal that I hadn't considered the lessons I could take from the experience. I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the conversation settle in. Maybe you're right. Maybe I need to focus on myself for a while. We spent the rest of the night talking about everything: life, love, and the endless possibilities that lay ahead. Jake's words helped chip away at the wall I had built around myself. I finally felt a flicker of hope, a sense of determination to not just survive this but to thrive. As the night ended, I realized I had a choice to make. I could either remain a victim of my circumstances or rise above them. I chose the latter. I wanted to reclaim my life, my sense of self, and the happiness I had lost. Once I returned to the cornerstone, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I started embracing new experiences, hitting the gym more regularly, trying new hobbies, and even exploring the dating scene again. It felt strange at first, but it was freeing to step outside my comfort zone. One evening, while I was working behind the bar, I noticed a woman who had been coming in occasionally. Her name was Jessica, and she had a bright smile that lit up the room. She was witty and charming, and I found myself drawn to her energy. We struck up a conversation, and I learned that she was a graphic designer who loved art and music. As we talked, I felt a connection I hadn't experienced in a long time. It was refreshing, and for the first time since everything with Sarah, I found myself genuinely laughing and enjoying another person's company. We exchanged numbers, and as she left the bar, I felt a flutter of excitement. Maybe I was ready to open my heart again. Maybe this was the beginning of something new and beautiful, something that could help me heal. I had a long road ahead of me, no doubt, but I finally felt like I was on the right path. As time went on, I found myself exploring this new connection with Jessica. We went out for dinners, and I introduced her to the bar, my little sanctuary that had become my world. She fit right in, and it felt good to allow someone new into my life. But I also knew that I had to confront Sarah eventually. I couldn't avoid the reality of our situation forever. I had to let her know that I was moving on, that I wouldn't be waiting for her anymore. I wanted to close that chapter firmly behind me, and I needed to do it on my terms. As I planned our conversation, I felt a sense of empowerment wash over me. I was ready to reclaim my life, free from the shackles of betrayal. I would be the one to write my own narrative from now on. And as I stood behind the bar one night, looking out at the regulars enjoying their drinks and laughter, I realized just how far I had come, one deliberate step at a time. As the days turned into weeks, I felt a shift within myself. The combination of hard work, new connections, and a growing sense of purpose pushed me further from the painful memories of my past. Jessica had become an integral part of my life, and with each date, I found myself smiling more genuinely. She brought a lightness to my heart that I had thought was long gone, and I was ready to embrace this new chapter. But amidst all the positive changes, I knew I needed to confront Sarah and have the conversation that had been brewing in the back of my mind. I wanted to end that chapter for good. I didn't want any lingering doubts or unfinished business. It was time to lay it all out on the table, and I resolved to do just that. I called Sarah one afternoon, my heart racing as I pressed the digits on my phone. "Hey, can we meet up? I need to talk to you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Sure, what's going on?" She replied, her tone casual, perhaps unaware of the weight of the conversation we were about to have. "Let's meet at the Cornerstone tonight," I suggested. "I'll be there at 8. When the time came, I arrived early, pacing behind the bar as the clock ticked closer to 8. I felt a mix of nerves and determination course through me. I had built up this moment in my head for weeks, and I needed to make sure I was prepared for whatever might unfold. When Sarah walked in, I immediately noticed the tension in the air. She looked around as if searching for something familiar, her eyes eventually landing on me. "So, what's this about?" she asked, crossing her arms defensively. "Let's sit down," I replied, motioning to a table in the corner. I wanted to keep this conversation private, away from prying eyes. We settled into our seats, and I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. Look, I think we both know why we're here. I started, keeping my voice calm but firm. Things have been really messy between us since, well, everything happened, and I need to be honest about where I stand. She rolled her eyes, her demeanor shifting from curious to defensive almost instantly. Do we really need to rehash this? I thought we were past it. Past it. Sarah, I need you to understand something. You hurt me deeply, I said, my voice steady. I don't want to dwell on the past, but I can't just pretend it didn't happen. You made choices that impacted our lives, and I can't just sweep that under the rug. Her expression hardened, and she leaned back in her seat. You make it sound like I took a knife and stabbed you, Mike. We were both unhappy. I thought you didn't care anymore. That's not true. I cared. I still care. I shot back, frustration bubbling to the surface. But your decisions, what you did, those were your choices, and they cost me everything. She opened her mouth to retort, but I pressed on. I want to let you know that I'm moving on. I'm seeing someone else, and I'm happy. I want you to know that I'm not waiting around for you anymore. I deserve better than what you gave me, and I've finally found that. Her eyes widened, and for a split second I saw a flash of hurt cross her face. Is this what this is about? You're trying to make me jealous. She spat, her voice dripping with sarcasm. No, Sarah, I replied, my tone serious. This isn't about jealousy, it's about closure. I want us to end this on a clear note. I'm done being tied to the past. She leaned forward, her expression shifting from anger to something softer, almost vulnerable. You really mean that? You're serious about this? I am. I deserve to be happy, and I'm not going to let you come back into my life and disrupt that, I said, feeling a surge of confidence. I've realized I can't keep holding on to something that no longer exists. Our relationship is done, and it's time for us both to move on. For a moment, silence enveloped us. I could see the wheels turning in her mind as she processed my words. I didn't want it to end like this, she finally said, her voice softer. I thought we could fix things. It's too late for that, Sarah. You made your choices, and I've made mine. I'm ready to focus on my future, I said, my resolve unwavering. The conversation shifted from confrontation to reflection. She told me about her regrets, how she had felt trapped, and how she had hoped things could have been different. But I listened with a level of detachment that surprised me. I was no longer that guy who would drop everything for her. I wish you the best, Sarah, but I won't be part of the life you've created. I want to be free of this, I said as I stood up to leave. As I walked out of the cornerstone, a wave of relief washed over me. I had done it. I had confronted my past head-on, and I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I was finally stepping into my own future, free from the ties that had held me back. The next day, everything felt different. I buzzed around the bar, making changes and putting new ideas into action. Jessica had been supportive, and I decided to bring her on board to help with some of the marketing efforts. We sat down over coffee, brainstorming new promotions and events. You seem different today, she remarked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. I confronted my past yesterday, I replied, a smile creeping across my face. It was tough, but I needed to do it. I feel lighter. Good for you, Mike. It takes courage to face those demons, she said, her encouragement wrapping around me like a warm blanket. As we continued discussing ideas for the bar, I felt an urge to share more of myself with her. I wanted to let her in, to explore the possibility of building something new and meaningful. I realized that I had made strides in my healing, and it was time to embrace the new relationships in my life. As the week unfolded, I found myself growing closer to Jessica, and the chemistry between us deepened. We laughed, shared stories, and celebrated the little victories at the cornerstone. I was finally learning to enjoy life again, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was on the right track. But in the back of my mind, I knew I still needed to stay vigilant. I had to ensure that I didn't repeat the patterns of my past. I had to nurture this new connection with care, and I was determined to be the best partner I could be. A sense of empowerment continued to grow within me, and I was ready to move forward, one intentional step at a time. The echo of my past was fading, replaced by the vibrant possibilities of a future I was eager to embrace, and I couldn't wait to see where this journey would take me next. As the weeks progressed, I felt myself truly embracing the changes in my life. The cornerstone became a thriving hub of activity, and with Jessica's creative energy and ideas, we turned it into something special. Customers were flocking in, and I could feel the momentum building. The bar was more than just a business. It became a community, a place where people came to connect, share stories, and make memories. On the personal front, my relationship with Jessica deepened. We spent countless evenings talking about our lives, our dreams, and our passions. I found myself opening up to her in ways I hadn't thought possible after everything with Sarah. She had a way of making me feel safe, and it was refreshing to be with someone who appreciated me for who I was. One Friday evening, we were sitting at the bar after closing, enjoying a rare moment of quiet. The lights dimmed low and the atmosphere was relaxed. I glanced over at Jessica, her laughter echoing through the otherwise silent bar. "You know, I never thought I'd find someone who could make me feel this way again," I admitted, my heart pounding as I spoke. She smiled, her eyes sparkling. "What way is that?" "Happy," I answered honestly. "After everything, I didn't think I could laugh or enjoy life again. But you've changed that for me." Her smile softened and she reached out, placing her hand on top of mine. "I'm really glad to hear that, Mike. I think we're both healing in our own ways. We've both been through so much, but it feels like we're on the right path now." We talked about our pasts and how they shaped us into who we were today, and I realized just how far I had come. The pain of my marriage with Sarah no longer had a hold on me. I had faced it, confronted the hurt, and emerged stronger. I was no longer that wounded man. I was someone ready to embrace love and life again. As the night progressed, I found myself leaning closer to her, drawn in by her warmth and kindness. "You know," I said, my voice low, "I think I could really see a future with you." Her eyes widened slightly and I saw a flicker of hope mirrored in her gaze. "Really? You mean that?" she asked, her voice soft. "Yeah, I do. I've spent so long focusing on the past that I forgot to look ahead. I want to build something meaningful with you," I confessed, feeling vulnerable yet empowered at the same time. She smiled, and the look in her eyes told me she felt the same. "Way, I want that too, Mike. I think we can create something really beautiful together." And with that, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. I was no longer shackled by the memories of betrayal. Instead, I was stepping into a future filled with promise, partnership, and love. But there was one more thing I needed to do to fully close the chapter on Sarah. I decided to reach out one last time, not out of anger or bitterness, but for closure. I called her and asked if we could meet. She agreed, and I prepared myself for the conversation. We met at a small cafe, and I could see the tension in her posture as I approached. "Hey," I said, offering a small smile. "Hey," she replied, her tone cautious. "I just wanted to talk about everything that happened, to finally put it to rest," I said, taking a seat across from her. "I thought we already did that," she said, defensive. "I didn't want to rehash the past. I just want you to know that I'm moving on. I've found happiness again, and I think it's important for both of us to recognize that." Her expression softened, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of the woman I once loved. "I'm glad you're happy, Mike, I really am. I know we can't go back, and I wouldn't want to. I just want us both to find our own paths and heal from this," I said, feeling a sense of relief wash over me as I spoke those words. "Yeah, I get that. I'm sorry for everything, truly. I've realized a lot since everything happened," she admitted, her voice reflecting genuine remorse. "Thank you for saying that. I hope you find what you're looking for too," I replied, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. With that final exchange, we parted ways, each of us stepping into new lives, liberated from the shadows of our past. As I walked away from the cafe, I felt a sense of closure settle over me. I was ready to embrace the life ahead of me without the baggage that had once weighed me down. Back at the Cornerstone, Jessica was waiting for me. I shared the news about my conversation with Sarah, and she smiled, her eyes lighting up with understanding. "You did the right thing, Mike. It takes strength to confront your past like that." I nodded, feeling lighter than I had in months. It feels good to finally close that chapter. As we moved forward into this new relationship, I had no illusions that everything would be perfect. There would be challenges, but I was ready to face them. I had learned to love again, to trust again, and to build the future I wanted. As I looked around the bar, filled with laughter and the clinking of glasses, I felt a sense of belonging that I had missed for so long. The Cornerstone was not just a bar. It was a place of healing, connection, and new beginnings. I was finally living the life I had always envisioned, and I couldn't wait to see where this journey would take me next.